going to, I'm obviously coming from a totally different perspective. As you see, I'm white, I'm not Indian. And my story is about building bridges. All my working life, from when I was a young woman to now, has been building bridges. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the way I see it. So this is where I was brought up. I was born in South Africa, and I grew up under the apartheid system. White people discriminated and suppressed black people. The most beautiful country was split and divided in every single sphere. Places for white people, less beautiful places for black people, just because the color of their skin. Everything was divided. Football clubs, football matches. You found these most awful, awful signposts everywhere. I'm just going to admit, Enoch, are you going to admit people for me? Okay, so
yes, yeah.
I left South Africa in 1970 and I came to this wonderful country. But this is how I grew up as well. I'm Jewish, and this was my family. Only this person, my father, survived. And I'm going to tell you just very little about it. My father was born in Germany. All these people were in German, and they were there from the 1750s. They were truly German and Jewish. My father fled to South Africa in the late 1930s, leaving his family behind. There's my father and his father. This is all that remains of his father, because he was deported from his town, first to a ghetto, and then he was murdered at Belzec's death camp, just because he was Jewish. This is the lady I was named after, Helen, my father's sister and her husband. These two people and their wonderful little boy fled from Germany to Amsterdam, were betrayed by a neighbor, deported first to Westerbork transit camp, and then in a train right across Europe to this awful place, Sobibor, a death camp where they were murdered on arrival, all of them. And this is all that remains of them. Again, just because they were Jewish. Right across Europe, during the Second World War, you all know about this, 6 million Jews were murdered, including 1.5 million children. That was in the 1940s, not that long ago, simply because they were Jewish. I went to study in Bosnia, because I teach about genocides and these awful actions. 800 men, boys, young boys and men were murdered in Bosnia simply because they were Muslim. I've worked in Rwanda for many, many years. 1 million Tutsis were murdered in Rwanda simply because they belonged to a different group and they weren't Hutus. And they were murdered, and there are mass graves showing where they were murdered. Most of you know there are many, many Hindu persecutions. And just in 2021, over 200,000 Hindus were killed, murdered, just because they were Hindu. There's an organization called the Genocide Watch. All these countries are on that Genocide Watch. In all these countries, people are being murdered, and there are more. I couldn't put them all onto the screen. Hatred and violence is spreading, resulting in the death of many men, women, old and young, and children. Each of these violent actions begins with words of hate, and this escalates to violence. And today, in our century, we have, as you all know, a major war, simply because people aren't in the right place, for greed, We have hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing from their country. So I come to something that is very important to me. I ask myself, and I ask all of you, particularly faith leaders, why is it that we all think we are right and everybody else is wrong? And, to answer that honestly, really honestly, why are we always the ones to think we're right? Why is it that we believe only we know the truth and nobody else does, and only our truth is the truth? It's a difficult one for people who are faith, very difficult for each of us to answer. But if you were born into another faith, not your faith, you might be answering these questions differently. And we need to understand that. We're born into something, or we believe something, but other people believe as passionately as we do. The world, Europe, Asia, and our own country, each and every one of our communities is becoming more and more diverse, culturally, religiously. This is important. Why do we fear it? For me, every time I come into contact with somebody of a different faith or a different culture, I get excited. I love it. I want that person to talk to me, to tell me about themselves, to explain why they see things from a different way, to teach me, and I want to learn. And this is the way I've been working all my adult life, in all the schools I've ever worked with, in the universities, and in my charity work. Why do people feel that people who are different to us should be feared, should be shunned? We're one human race. So I don't believe people who say to me, oh, the Jewish race or the Hindu race or the Muslim race. What nonsense. We're not animals. Everybody else, every human being is one human being that belongs to one race. There is no such a thing as other races. And I think we need to recognize that we are one family. It doesn't matter what our color is, our religion, where we live, what we believe. We just must recognize we are all one. We're all thinking human beings, and no matter what we believe, God has given each of us the ability to think. God has given us this ability, a gift. Let's use that God-given gift not to discriminate, not to argue, not to fight, but to learn from each other, to care, to respect, and to love each other, not to tolerate each other. Toleration is not what we want. We want more than that. In our troubled world, we want care and overt love. It doesn't matter what that person believes in. Doing this doesn't mean we have to give up what we believe or our culture. No, it's got nothing to do with that. You can continue to believe passionately, but it doesn't mean somebody else mustn't. Let's take a step as faith leaders to move in that direction. A very good friend of mine, a Sikh, told me this story many years ago. And actually, when I repeated it, he told me who he was, and you might be able to guess in a moment. I visited the Gurdwara for the first time in my life when I was working in Watford. And I was so impressed by the equality and the way they spoke to me. I always wear a Star of David, so they knew I had a different faith. And this gentleman and I were talking. I taught his children. And he said to me, there's a mountain, a very, very high mountain. You, as a Jewish person, go up one path. I go up another path as a Sikh. The Muslim gentleman, woman will go up another path. Everybody will take their own path to the top of this mountain. And on that top of the mountain, we will all find one God. And I was so impressed with that. I have taught that in every school, in every religious studies lesson I've ever taught, and wherever I go. And I'd like to thank you, Hyde, because I'd forgotten you were the one that taught me that. And it's so true. We all take our own path to the top with our own conscience, our own belief, but we meet God at the top. This is where we all live. I'm sorry, I couldn't put a picture of the Gurdwara on because I couldn't get a good photo. But Watford, I love Watford. Aren't we lucky? Watford is one of the most diverse, exciting communities, and we're all represented there. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, all of us are there. We've got something else we're very lucky with in this country. And I work in Eastern Europe and I work in many African countries, and they don't have this, our British values. A belief in freedom. I hate the word tolerance, but that's what they said. I would say a love of others. Accepting personal and social responsibility, respecting and upholding the rule of law. And us as faith people, we need to respect and uphold the rule of law. And we need to make those that believe what we believe follow the same. We must live by this every day. These values have a vital role in bringing us together. It ensures that all our cultures come together and we build a common home with different cultures, different ethnic makeup, different religions, but one set of values that we all live by. So I wonder, we would all say, yes, I do believe in all that. And yeah, I do that. And I'm sure you people listening here do. But we have a responsibility, every single one of us. And the mere fact that you've joined this evening makes me believe you know you have a responsibility to care, to make sure that we are really part of the global community, that we're really part of one human race, because every action, every decision makes something happen. And by merely not doing anything, still makes something happen. So sitting on the fence, you're still making an action, you're still deciding. So everything happens because someone made a decision, arguing, fighting, discriminating, prejudice. It's because we've decided that, an action. This is my dream for our world and actually for our children. Those are children's hands across our world, black, white, not so brown, yellow, but our children. What kind of world are we building where we're arguing and fighting that we know better than others? This is not what we want for our children. Being a Holocaust educator, having a family that were destroyed, has reinforced my firm belief that we must stand up and be counted. We must not be bystanders. We must talk to each other. We must listen to each other. And we must understand that we are not always the ones that are perfect and right. Other people are equally right, have equal values, but we can live together, we can share and learn. So, let us each build a bridge. Let's join our bridge. It might be an uphill bridge. We might struggle getting to the top together. We can have friendly discussions. I don't want to use the word arguments, but let's go together. Let's hold hands together. All our communities, whether you're here, whether you're in Birmingham, Leicester, Bradford, wherever you are, let's go together on this journey so that we can make our children's world a better, happier, and more peaceful world. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dame Helen Hyde. I remember meeting Helen quite a while ago when the One Vision in need of registered as a charity. I approached Helen to serve as a trustee. One of the questions Helen asked me, I still remember that, tell me what you want me to do. All I said to her is, let's work together. Let's put our religion, race, creed, everyone apart, and let's come together and work together to serve the community. And she said yes without asking any more questions. And thank you, Helen, for all your work you do. And
I just hope people take my heartfelt words to their communities because I'm so passionate about it. And if you want me to talk to your community, I will, but I'll repeat the same speech because it's what I believe.
Thank you, Helen. I'll hand over to Harjit now. Harjit.
Thank you very much, Helen. And it's quite an important talk, which Helen's talked from her own personal experience of what she's gone through as well. But also here with us today, we've got quite some important people in our community in Watford as well. So if I can ask Radha Mohan just to actually come in. He's also the public relations officer at the Hyde Bhagavantha Manor Krishna Temple near Watford. He's been based there for the last 30 years. He's also part of the community's drama group and interfaith team. So he's part of our team in Watford Interfaith. In his spare time, he runs his YouTube channel on Vedic science and cosmology. Over to you, Radha.
Hi, yeah. Well, what would you, is there anything you'd like me to say in particular? Or, I mean, obviously I completely agree with what I just heard. I thought she spoke very, very well, and it couldn't make any possible improvement. And obviously, you know, due to what's happened to her family, I actually lived with a Jewish family in Manchester when I was a drama student 30 years ago. And her name was Mrs. Alvarez. She was of Portuguese origin, but she too had lost her extended family in the Holocaust. And she once said to me, and I made a promise to her in my youth before I joined the Christian movement. She said, mate, she was elderly, she was a narrator. She said to me, I haven't got long left, but you're still a young man. You're still only 20 years old. Make me this promise. Learn from events such as the Holocaust and other attempts at genocide. Be a better person, bring people together. And I made that promise to her, and I meant it as well. And during that moment I had with Mrs. Alvarez, it stayed with me, that moment. And I believe that moment lives with me today. And that's why I always consider interfaith projects, where it's Hertfordshire, Hertsmere, or Hemel Hempstead or Watford, which I'm involved. It's very important to me, and it's a great honour to represent my community at these different interfaith events. And so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Radha. I think the backdrop to why we're having this as well is that I think the last couple of weeks or so, we've seen places like Leicester having this upheaval that's taken place. And I think it's caused concerns. A place like Leicester, where I actually studied for a few years at Watford University, I think the kind of town that I remember was a town that communities, whichever background, all got on. And I think for myself, it's you know, seeing those kind of pictures that we saw on TV on those groups. I think a place like Watford, especially Watford in Hertfordshire, is one of the most diverse towns. I think, you know, how do we as communities try and, you know, bring people together, bring our communities together, so we don't sort of share any of those kind of episodes. So we've also got Zaid here as well. Zaid, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, just switching my mute off.
Again, Zaid, I think everyone knows each other here because I think we've got so many important members of the community here. Zaid, we've got a friendship that goes back many years. But also you're involved in the Watford Interfaith Association, as well as the Watford Muslim Youth Centre, which I think is not too far away when it's going to be finished. And so I just want you to sort of share your concepts on how do we bring communities together.
Yeah, I think Watford is a great place to live. I've grown up here most of my life. I was blessed to meet and work with Hyde and his family many years ago. Also growing up in Watford, I spent a lot of time with the local church. The group there took us in when we were young, kept us off the streets, but also at the same time taught us a lot about actually not just Christian values, which is emanating from the church, but actually getting a chance to reflect my own faith that I was growing up, and put into perspective really that what Dame Helen was saying earlier, that we have many paths to one God. And I think Watford, as I've grown up, I've sort of, I was very fortunate to come across Wefa and Hyde and the whole team. And I think part of the solution that we're seeking today, from what we've seen happening up in Leicester, I think we have a solution here in our town, which I believe there's a good, strong interfaith community there in Leicester as well. But certainly for us, we're seeking solutions. And I think what we've present over the years, building these bridges and uniting, all the faith, the diversity that we have here. I think that's the path we need to continue following and continue building on. We need to keep working with the faith leaders, because ultimately, to each of the faith communities, they're the ones that bring those communities forward. But bringing us all together, I think that's the key. We need to, I think, keep working, bringing those faith leaders together to represent WIFA. There's a lot of great work that happens throughout the whole year through WIFA. There are lots of different events that happen. We've got Interfaith Week coming up in a week or so. But also we've got the WIFA Interfaith Pilgrimage, where we visit many of the different faith places of worship. And I think really talking about building bridges, there's no other great opportunity than really those opportunities that we have throughout the year. And I think, we've done lots of great work over the years, but I think we need to continue building those bridges and continue reaching out to the community, particularly the youth. Looking at Leicester, there was definitely a presence of a lot of very young people involved in all sides. And I think, not just restraint, but I think those leaders need to come forward to put sort of peace and harmony back into the towns, really, and to actually share our common values of humanity, of love, of peace, and seeking harmony. Ultimately, we all have our tough lives to bear and to raise our kids in a peaceful manner. So I think we've got to keep chipping away and keep trying to work towards bringing all of our faith communities together to build understanding, to build tolerance, but ultimately to build that connectivity. We all have the same color blood ultimately, so inside we're all the same, really. We're not that far different. But I think there's perceptions out there. Sometimes people lack a little bit of education. WIFA used to host every couple of weeks, inviting members from the community of different faiths, and just an opportunity to talk, to listen, to share, to grow, to understand. The mechanics are there to build those bridges, but we've got to find some way of making that bigger, particularly with Watford, because that's our immediate concern here, but also then to share that to other towns. So I just really wanted to share a few of the experiences that I've had through this time. And I think we've all, Hyde have been working a lot with the youth, doing sporting activities as well. That's a good way of reaching out. But I think when we get those opportunities, we all need to come together to support those events and to show that we're of different faith, but that we all have that tolerance, that we all have that respect and that kind of bond for humanity. Ultimately, that's what will speak out words. And if there are those sort of issues that have happened in Leicester, those are the moments where we need to come together and to restore calm and restore peace. So I thank you, One Vision, for bringing this opportunity together to share ideas, share feelings from our hearts and our souls. And I hope that we can continue and that I can be of some sort of support to help you all there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zaid. I'm just going to move on to Amrutpal Singh, who's represented sort of many organisations, and he's been at the sharp end of things that have happened with his. He's got a lot of experience as well. So, Amrutpal, can I pass the stage on to you next?
Hi, Hyde. Hi, everybody at One Vision. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Initially, I would just like to thank Hyde for giving me this opportunity to speak for a few moments. Unfortunately, I didn't actually get to log on early enough to understand what was happening prior to the last speaker, but from having a look at the poster, being from the West Midlands, having knowledge of what happened in Leicester and also what occurred in Smethwick, I was actually there on site trying to keep the peace, let's say. I'll keep it short and simple. So for complex situations, at times there are complex answers or complex ways to deal with a situation. However, there are also simple ways or simpler methods to handle a situation which can obviously go down the wrong path. Now, from my understanding and from what I've kind of been involved in the past, if you have established links and dialogue with grassroots movements, individuals, people who are on the ground, you can get information out there or correct and handle misinformation before it reaches the public or before it's shared to the masses. And I think in terms of with Leicester, possibly that's something that they may have failed on or something that needs to be looked at. The same in Smethwick. When we arrived on site, we had members of the Christian faith, the Hindu community, myself as a Sikh representative. We actually went to the mandir, spoke to them, and also had dialogue with the Muslim community. And it was during that dialogue that actually some individuals actually went over to the mandir, although it was controlled by the police. But from my understanding, is as long as we establish dialogue on a grassroots level, we can handle these situations going forward a lot easier. And going forth, I think that's what One Vision and other groups, similar groups, need to do: get grassroots colleagues and build them links. So if in the future, before anything happens, you can get the right information out there and challenge certain preachers. Or, for example, in Leicester, there were some individuals that tried to incite the situation. However, the local Muslim community actually called them out and challenged them that, guys, what you're doing here is only going to incite the situation or inflame the situation further. And likewise within the Hindu community and other communities, if you have the right people out there first, who are influencers, who have the links, who people do listen to, and everybody gets together before these incidents occur or at an earlier time, we can kind of tackle this head on rather than being on the back end of it and then trying to find solutions. Now, Harjit's done a lot of good work over the years with BOSS and other organizations, and he is a key individual that can certainly help with this going forward. Looking forward to working with all of you guys, and that's it really from me, Harjit. Any questions?
We'll come back to that in a bit, because we've got some other speakers that we just want to introduce as well. We're quite fortunate enough to also have Dean Russell, our local MP, as well. Dean's been
Harjit, if Dean will go in a little while, I'll text you to say, because Dean is just exchanging laptops. So
okay, not a problem. Would you like to introduce Maria as well?
Yeah, we have Maria here. We called Maria into this meeting because Maria is doing some projects with One Vision. Maria, would you you've been monitoring very closely with building bridges and what's happening in Leicester. Could you just share us what exactly you're doing with South Asian heritage women, please?
You're mute. You're on mute there, Maria.
On mute there. I cannot tell you how delighted I am to be with One Vision. I briefly said to Helen and Femi earlier, my background Polish. My parents were prisoners of war in Russia, and my uncle was murdered by the Germans, the Nazis, in Auschwitz, and my grandparents were tortured by the Nazis. And my parents were Polish political refugees. We came over to London. There were 6 of us in one room, and then we moved to South Oxley, just outside, in Watford, part of Watford, and that's where I grew up. We were the only Poles in the village, so we were the only foreigners in the village. But essentially, that's where I grew up, and I love Watford. And I developed a little bit later on. My father told me to do not to do two things. One go into mental health and one go into entertainment. And true to form, being a little bit rebellious, I went into both and started comedy clubs. I developed Jongleurs Comedy Clubs, which anybody in Birmingham and Leicester will know. Watford had one. And I was told recently by somebody, and also I'm a psychoanalyst. I'm now a doctor of psychoanalysis. And the reason I'm here and working with One Vision, and Dean's been very instrumental in this, in introducing me, is that I found as I was growing up through the hardship that my parents were going through, their absolute despair, they'd lost everything, they'd lost their family, their home, their language, just everything. That when something funny came on, and my mum used to make Christmas crackers, and we used to pop a Christmas cracker, you know, we had that groan and moan, but it lightened the load. And eventually I realized that my path was to bring the two things together, the psychoanalysis, the therapy that I do with people, plus a bit of humor. And so I'm working with One Vision to actually lighten the load for a number of people through business, because that's part of my enterprise. I built a business from owning, I lived in a bedsit, I owned a bicycle, I loaned £300 from the bank and developed a business which was eventually valued at 30 million. And it's not my money, by the way, but that's how it was valued. So it shows it can be done, but I want to pass on the knowledge that I've got, both as a woman who's had children, but also have a strong faith. I'm a Christian. And what I noticed when I was building my comedy clubs is that there are a number of different faiths that all performed in comedy. And one of my comedians just recently said, you know, when you were developing comedy, Maria, it didn't matter where we came from, as long as you were funny, you managed to perform. And I had every single religion performed for me. You know, so Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Christians, just you name it, anybody, any color, as long as they were funny, they performed at the comedy clubs. And in Leicester, we had a very big club, and in Birmingham. And I must say that the language of comedy is a good way for people to relate to each other, is to explain who you are and not take life so seriously. Except I know there are serious issues. And as a therapist, what I do, I work with people internally. And if you take off our skin, as somebody has already said, everybody's, you know, blood is red. And the same with us internally. We all have the same fears. We all have the same need for belonging. We all need love. We all need support. We all need care. And I think what Dame Helen had suggested, and I do think we need a global morality to start taking over. And I think the suggestions that have already been made are something we can all adhere to within the work we do, whether it's inspiring other people, working in faiths, or working the way I am, just beginning to work with South Asian women to help them develop their own businesses in a small way, but also they are part of the community with their children, and to use humor to lighten the load, and also respectfully. And I do recall a time I did send somebody out to the Middle East to perform, and he performed. He was a Muslim who performed to other Muslims, but he was very rude. And I stopped him working for us, because you have to lay down the law. And I think there's certain laws you have to adhere to. And I think this is a wonderful medium and way for people to agree to a way of working, agree to a way of dealing with each other, and to be respectful of each other's own beliefs, own faiths, but also giving them a platform to say what they believe, to say what they worry about, to say what frightens them. You know, their own culture, perhaps to lose their culture, perhaps to lose their identity, not to be able to integrate. And integration is so important on a psychological level, to understand each other, to know that we are not going to, nobody's going to overtake them. And I must say, we do live in about the best country you could ever live in for this, where we can live harmoniously with other cultures, other faiths, other creeds, and know on the inside, we all have the same hearts, and we all have the same minds that want the same vision together. And so I'm absolutely delighted to be invited here today.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for your kind words. We also have Temi and Charu from Hertfordshire County Council. They both are doing some fantastic work in terms of faith covenant, diversity and inclusion. Temi, could I ask you to respond, in terms of what's going on with Leicester and working together is important.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you again for the opportunity to join. And it's so inspiring hearing Dame Helen and that message that she mentioned something about tolerance. And I think where that word comes in, because in the public sector equality duty, it talks about eliminating harassment, bullying. And someone had asked that question as an elected member. I said, well, how do you eliminate? And sometimes we do have these, what would be objectives, but they're necessary because we have to have something to aim for. And when she mentioned about actually we should love, and I'm thinking that has to be the point. No matter what the differences might be, and I just mentioned that when we were raising the flag for Pride. And personally, I'm here, I represent, speaking in my role at Hertfordshire County Council, and speaking also as a Christian, and finding that when I got the role, some people were asking me, how are you going to take this forward as a Christian and your beliefs? And I thought what they were asking me about obviously was Pride, the LGBT agenda. How does that fit in? And I asked the question, I said, what within your faith would not be resolved, or with anything that we do would not be resolved by love? If Putin woke up tomorrow morning and said, I just have this love for Zelensky, be over. So one of those things, it's a journey. It's a journey that we all have to strive to get to that point. But if people aren't there, they do need to work on that tolerance. That's a starting point, that you tolerate. And I'd say that even at work, that you may have your different views when you come through the door, you might be at that point of tolerance. But I think our duty is to get people to understand that as one community, our destination is to get to that point where we understand the concept of love. But just to say, within Hertfordshire County Council, it is one of those things where we are a very, very diverse organisation, still working on it. We've got areas to improve and look to replicate what's going on within the community. But we have, Shari and I have been doing some work. I'm much newer. Shari's part of Hertfordshire. I call her a Watford girl. I don't know how she feels about that. But the involvement is to look to ensure that we reflect the community. And we've been doing some work around the Faith Covenant and the Interfaith Forum, and making sure that we're a part of that, partnering in the great work that our voluntary sector does. And part of that is bringing about understanding. And it's wonderful to see a local authority involved in a group that represents so many different aspects of our community, particularly around the area of faith, being able to come together and work. And we're looking at signing the Faith Covenant, where we'll actually sign up to sort of agree on the attitudes, behaviors, and mindsets that will move Hertfordshire as a community forward. So it's a great opportunity to come again, to be in the midst of people who share that vision. And the last thing I'll say is that while we're talking about building bridges, we also have to remember that there's another image of a fence and how it causes a fence. A fence causes offense, and use it in a different way. When we take offense, which we often do, as Dame Helen had said, because we feel we know the truth, we feel that we're right, and so we get offense, and that causes barriers. So I think the thing is that, again, using that word and looking at love, the relationships that we try to build within Hertfordshire, I believe we would be a shining example across the globe, really, because of the work that's been done by One Vision, by the community, and by everyone in this call. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to being engaged with all of the work that we're doing in Hertfordshire County Council across some of the services that you all are behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Temi. I would like to bring in Ashwin Mehta as well, who's a good friend, as well as a person that leads the Jain community in Bushy. And I had the opportunity to visit the place of worship for the Jains, and I was really amazed by the work that had gone on, and the outstanding beauty of the place as well, but also to feel the atmosphere in there. And I think, Ashwin, you've also, your community leads on sort of the world peace prayer that takes place, isn't it, as well, online. And so I don't know if you want to add your few words as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Hyde. And again, I just echo other people's recognition of bringing everyone together. I think it's quite important. I mean, within the Jain tradition, ahimsa, non-violence. When we say non-violence, is a negative, but it actually means extension of love to everyone, which I think everyone shares here. That's really the crux to where we are. And I think I echo also if we just cut to the chase, I think for me, the question of I'm right has come up a few times, and that's what causes these issues. So we have something called Anikanpad in Jainism, which is an absolute one of the core pillars, which means there are many truths. There are many sides to the truth. Mine is not the only truth. I think that's kind of thing we're saying here. I guess a red flag right now for us, why we're all here, is how do we avoid a similar situation arising in Watford? Because the speed with which what happened is, I think, what took people by surprise. And maybe that's partly down to social media now, how things can move so quickly, spread misinformation, and really also the kind of impulsiveness of the youth as well. So I think certain things which I think your colleague Amritpal mentioned, I think are really important in terms of how do we prevent these things. So going forward, there should be almost an emergency network of faith leaders who can be triggered into action very, very quickly when they see something like this happen. People perhaps are monitoring social media to see what is actually going on out there, but also, I guess, an understanding of what is that underlying cause of hatred. What is that misbelief that triggers this? And I think that is something where organizations like WIFA, the other interfaith organizations, perhaps that's something that we need to take a bit more seriously now in terms of the youth. What are the beliefs? Do we actually understand what they're thinking? What are the trigger points that are out there? Even a cricket match, if the animosity is so great, can that be hijacked by other people to create this kind of issue? So I think several things like that can be looked at going forward. And so I think this meeting that Hyde on behalf of One Vision that is started is very, very important, and probably a good model for, depending on the outcome, for a lot of other interfaith groups out there in communities. Yeah, thank you so much, Hyde.
Enoch, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm still learning. Thank you so much, Ashwin. We got Dean Russell, MP here. He's also the Minister for Enterprise and Markets. Am I right saying?
That's correct, yeah.
Dean is also one of the trustees for One Vision. Dean, you probably know that British Muslims and the British Hindus are far more than what happened in Leicester. We all will live together. And we got predominantly diverse population in your constituency, from British Muslims and British Hindus. What is your thought as an MP and being in the government about the community and the unity?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for organising this. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm about to use my headphones. Well, first, so as I say, first things first, I'm incredibly grateful that not only is this event happening tonight, but so many people are on it and so many familiar faces and some new as well. For me, community is everything. We stand together in the times of trouble, and that's what keeps trouble away. And I think the really important part of what's been so important in Watford over many years. And I've been very privileged to see it firsthand over the past 2.5 years, is how much we do stuff together. We talk together, we volunteer together, we go to community events together. And I think the important part of breaking down barriers is making sure those barriers don't exist in the first place. And I think what I've seen in Watford, and I feel, you know, as a resident here as well as the Member of Parliament, is just that sheer sense of togetherness that we have to combat the sorts of troubles that we've seen elsewhere. Now, I have to say, I used to live in Leicester, so I lived in Leicester for 7 years. I went to Montfort University, just like Harjit. Sadly, we must have missed each other in terms of the times, but we were there around similar time. And one of the things that also, as being someone who was brought up in, you know, grew up from the Midlands originally in Birmingham, you know, I've always lived in a very multicultural environment. And, you know, when I was at university in Leicester, I used to love going down the Narborough Road and, you know, having a choice of almost every fruit and veg that you could imagine in the world, not knowing how to cut many of them, but you know, being able to ask someone behind the counter, what's this, and getting guidance and enjoying the food and enjoying the humour and enjoying the character of everyone. And I think that's what is so important. You know, we heard Maria earlier talk so brilliantly about the role of comedy as well, and the role of sense of humour. And I think what we've been able to do in Watford so far, and long may it continue, is that we've been able to get to know each other. And I think when you look at different faiths, when you look at different people from political backgrounds and just generally from different backgrounds, the more time you spend with people, the more likely you're going to go, oh, actually, they're all right. Actually, I quite like them. You know, actually, I quite like to go for a coffee with them, or spend time with them, or go and do some stuff in a charity. And I know it's a very long answer to a very short question, but I think my take on it is that the more we can do that, the better. And I think that's why charities like One Vision, which I'm proud to be a trustee of, but also organisations like Small Acts of Kindness, Goods for Good, you know, the Salvation Army through to Sewer Day. I mean, all of these organisations have a really wide base of volunteers from across the town and beyond. And I think it's an inspiration to know that we have them, but they don't happen passively, they happen actively. And so to just finish off the answer to my question, I don't know if you'll ask me another one, because I've obviously taken a lot of time to answer it. But what I would say is that, you know, these things happen not just because we want to love each other, and absolutely agree with the comments earlier that, you know, love does conquer all, but also it's about putting a process in and being active in that process. And so having activities is important. Taking the action and ensuring that you go out and meet people and do stuff with them is important. Giving people space as well is important. And I'll just finish my long answer with something I said in my maiden speech, and I'm pleased that I did, because it's been repeated back to me many times, was that I have a belief in what I call hope. Hope being HOPE, help one person every day. So HOPE, help one person every day. And, you know, as an MP, I like to think I help a lot more than that, even though I'm sure some people from other parties might disagree. But, you know, I have that as a mission to try and help someone every day. And I think if we all take that and help one person every day, irrelevant of where they're from, what their background is, who they are, we get to know them better, and we help ourselves as well. So I think process, being active, and think about others as well as yourself. And I think actually we've got a very strong community because of that.
Thank you very much, Dean. Just to also add as well, we've had Inclusion Week last week. This month is Black History Month. We've got Diwali Bandi Chhod coming up very shortly, in the next couple of weeks or so. So I think it's an opportunity to actually experience other cultures, other traditions. And we've also got Watford Celebration taking place on the 30th. And so I would encourage yourselves to all come down. It's going to be held at Atreya Shopping Centre, so where Charter Places. Again, the community is coming together, and we'll be leading on, you know, it could be a form of dance, a song, poetry, So please come along and encourage your communities to be part of it, because that's all that concept of dialogue, conversation, talking, being together. You know, those are the things that are going to help us in the future. And I often say this, that when the riots took place, it actually ended in Watford, but I don't think it was by accident. It was actually the hard work for the last over 40 years, with organisations like WEFA being around, and also the dialogue conversation that's been taking place with different community groups and charities and organisations. We are going to bring it to a close very shortly, but I do want to offer it out to everyone, because we've got so many important people here, and I think everyone knows each other as well. Please, if you want to spend a minute or so, just maybe sharing your views and, you know, and taking it, how we can take it forward from here, really.
Can I just add one very quick point that I should have made, and it just occurred to me as we've been talking. I'm doing with One Vision, the conference for South Asian women on the 20th of November, and that's going to be at the Pump House. But I do think that women are underestimated, and I know it's mostly men on the streets, but if somehow we can influence women as well, and this comes from women influencing women, if we can all, as you say, Dean said about creating that infrastructure, if we all adhere to those, you know, sort of Dame Helen said right at the beginning, and everybody really agrees with certain attributes that we can all follow and we can all instill in each other. And if women can be part of that, if they're at home with their children as well, to make sure that we all put those through, that women realize that how important they are as well at home. And if we can help them in some way and put the message out to women, and I'll be doing that, obviously, but if we don't forget that women at home have this vital role that they can play with their teenage boys, with their teenage girls, with their husbands, with their fathers, in their community as well, because I think sometimes they may feel that they can't do anything, but I really believe they can.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
I've just suddenly saw Sarah. Basically, Sarah is one of our trustee and previous High Sheriff. Sarah, thank you for joining. Is there anything you want to add?
Everybody, and it's nice to see so many friends on this call as well. As ever, I think it's fantastic that One Vision has brought us all together, and I do hope that the leaders of the different communities who are on this call tonight will take back the message from everyone who has spoken this evening to everyone within their communities, because it's no good if just a group of leaders and like-minded people come together for these events. It's all about filtering this message down and increasing the reach. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, as always, to Dame Helen for being so inspiring and starting us off, and to everybody who has joined this evening. It's just vital that we all work together always.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We've got another 4 more minutes before we're going to bring this session to a close today. So again, it's open to anyone that wants to say a few words as well. I know we've got Pastor Git as well. I don't know if you want to say some words as well.
You know, it's always dangerous, Hyde, to ask a pastor to say something when he or she does not have a script in front. It can become a long. I will keep it really short. This is wonderful again tonight. Thank you so much. You're very true to your mission statement of One Vision, to bring people together. That's what it's about. And to bringing people together, it all revolves around education, right? And thank you so much again, Dame Helen, for sharing from your experience and everyone else. I mean, if we can learn to hate, because hate is not something that comes natural to us. We teach our children, we teach one another to hate. If we can teach that, we can also unlearn it. And that has to come with education. We have to learn from one another. We just have to listen to each other's stories. Does not mean, I mean, I'm a Christian and I love to be a Christian and I love what I believe in. But I also love to learn what other people believe, and that's different than my belief, and there's beauty in it. And if we can share the beauty of each other's faith and non-faith, if we can just share the beauty of life, of being humans together, one race, I mean, what a much better place this is, and what a much better life each and every one of us is experiencing. And I love that picture that you painted earlier, that you shared, Dame Helen, which you, Hajit, shared with her a while ago, that mountain. I love mountains. I come from a country which is filled with mountains. It's called the Netherlands. It has high peaks. It's beautiful. I mean, you can climb mountains. No, that's why I came to England. You've got real mountains, at least here, at least some proper ones. But the beautiful thing with mountains is, yes, we can all go from different parts of the mountain up to the top. But I've also learned that climbing a mountain is never easy. And so even whatever God we hold to be, or whatever we're searching in life, it's never an easy walk. It's never an easy journey. And so in the journey, we need one another. I've learned that in mountains, you can't do it on your own. When something happens, it's good to have other people around. Even if they go a slightly different route, it's good to help one another. And so I love to just continue with you all to make it just a little bit better and easier for everyone to journey on that path. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor Git. Well done. And always, you've got wise words to share with everyone. I really appreciate that. Enoch, can I just sort of add you in again? Because I think one of the things that we wanted to do is actually create a statement from us as a community in Watford. So I don't know if you can sort of just expand upon that and let everyone know what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you're right, Harjit. We all coming together, putting a statement of that we will be together. You know, whatever is happening is happened, but it's just an encouraging for our younger generation. I'll work with Harjit and Dame Helen, Hyde, and Dean and everyone. We are going to put a statement together. We'll share it with you all, so that will remind within us how we all can come together and be united. Thank you, Harjit.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've coming up to the hour, so we've got one last minute. So all I want to do to conclude is thank everyone, our guest speakers as well today. We were expecting one other speaker, but unfortunately couldn't make it. But hopefully we'll get Maksud, who used to live in Watford many years ago, but he's worked for the Home Office as well, and unfortunately couldn't make it today. But hopefully we'll have him on another time. So you know, a real sense of thank you and a good, you know, sort of there's an atmosphere that we can feel, even though we're online. There isn't a real atmosphere that I can feel, that there's a togetherness that we have. And let's keep this going. Let's keep the dialogue, and let's make sure our communities are safe and also together. And I think Watford encompasses everything that we share about being together. So can I wish everyone a good evening, and thank you for everyone coming today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Harjit, do you want to join back?
Oh, how do I jump back now?
The same link.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. How are you?
I'm not too bad. You've been very quiet, Nilanjana.
Do you want to shut the recording?
Oh, yes.
Hi, Melody. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good to hear your voice again.
Good to hear yours as well.
Hello, yes.
Nilanjana, how you doing?
Not bad at all. After the 9th, I'll be a bit better. I'll get some sanity back.
Then you'll say that after the 30th as well.